What's up? Welcome to the Inner City Innovators Podcast, where we will discuss marginalized communities and what it will take to bring true, lasting hope and transformation to the disadvantaged. Now, here are your hosts and hope dealers, LaShawn Montal and Ricky Aiken.
What's up, y'all? Welcome back to ICI Podcast, where we teach you how to be a hope dealer. We got my boy LaShawn, who's been out for a minute. And
What's up?
Cindy Lopez from Crime Stoppers.
Hi,
Welcome.
thank you. Thank you for having me.
We're happy to have you. LaShawn, bro, you've been missing a few weeks, bro.
Yeah, first of all, let's jump into that, right into that. I'm feeling great to be back today. I left Ricky in the water to swim by himself for about 6 weeks. We just went over it, but things happen, man. That's a part of life. We got to wear many different hats. We talked about that in past episodes, where we got to show up and show out. So as a young man, I'm learning the art of priority. I'm learning the art of balance, and it's starting to feel good that it's working for me because I managed to level things out to where I can get back to my passion and doing what I love each and every week. So feeling good
happy
today.
to have you back, bro.
Yeah,
I had
man.
to slow down on the record until I got you back. I was like, hold on, hit the brakes, man.
I saw you getting creative with it, bro, and I love it. I love how you were mixing it up with the Q&As and things like that. Very creative, bro.
Awesome.
It's what
Thank
you do.
you. Well, today we have a special guest, Cindy from Crime Stoppers. A few weeks ago, we had your executive director, remind me your name?
Angela.
Angela came into our team meeting and told us a little bit about Crime Stoppers. And Crime Stoppers had always been around since I was a kid. I had always heard about it. But y'all know, we from the hood, right? And when you think of Crime Stoppers, one thing comes to mind. What's that?
Snitch.
Snitches, right? So as a kid growing up, there was always this, I can't mess with them. But as y'all know, I'm against that. I'll tell y'all straight up, I'm snitching. If you're terrorizing my community and you're making it unsafe for the young people who are forced to grow up in these communities, I want you out. You know, if you are a young person that's trapped in the throes of cycles of gun violence, we're here as a resource to you. We're here to save you, to help you get off that path. But for anyone else that isn't thinking about the community at large, like I want you out, you know. The people who can't afford to get up and move out of communities of concentrated violence do, but so many people don't because they can't. And I'm here to advocate for those people. So I'm excited to talk to you about Crime Stoppers and some of the amazing things that y'all have going on. But before I do, I want to ask about you. Where'd you grow up? Like, how? Like, are you from West Palm?
No, so
and how did you intersect with Crime Stoppers?
So I'm originally from Naples, Florida. It's on the other coast.
Nice.
We moved here about 6.5 years ago, and I always was in like criminal-ish somewhat. I wanted to be a lawyer growing up.
Yeah.
I grew up watching Law and Order, so that's what I really wanted to do.
SVU.
So I worked at the courthouse over there for a felony judge. Then when I moved here, I started working for the sheriff's office as a dispatcher. So 911 dispatcher. I did that for about 5 or 6 years. Then a little over a year ago, I started with Crime Stoppers as their coordinator. So I've always had a passion for crime in that. I have, there's law enforcement in our family, military background, things like that. So I've always been like super passionate about law enforcement.
Got you.
Yeah.
Got you. And so, a lot of people, one of the things that surprised me about Crime Stoppers is just how zip tight y'all's process is.
Yes.
Like when someone calls, like you were just telling me before, it's anonymous. Like you don't even get the caller ID. Talk me through, right? If I know someone that was murdered in my community and I know who did it, I know it's a bad person that's been wreaking havoc in our community, what does it look like when I pick up the phone to call Crime Stoppers? How do I know that it's not going to end up in the wrong hands or I'm going to be outed as a snitch, so to say?
So we don't work with any one law enforcement agency. So we are a nonprofit, and what we do, I'm basically like the law enforcement liaison. So things come to me through either detectives or just the public itself. They know that a crime happened in their community and they're like, I want to tell someone what I know. So what'll happen is there's actually 3 ways to contact us. You can do our 800 line, you can go online on our website, or you can even download our app. We do have an app.
Y'all got an app?
Yes. So you actually have two apps.
Right.
So there's two different apps you can download to report tips. So it literally can be that anonymous. So if you call, we use a out of country call center. It's in Canada.
Yeah.
That call center answers our 800 line. So that right there, you're not talking to a law enforcement agency at all.
Right.
So that call center we pay, our nonprofit.
Yeah.
And you can either choose to just give them the tip directly, or you
Yeah.
can choose to talk to me directly.
Yeah.
So again, my phone at my office, no caller ID. There's no way for me to call you back.
Right.
We don't ask your name. We don't ask for any kind of email, phone number, nothing. So when you call us, we ask you, what kind of tip do you want to report? You give us basically all the information you have.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple questions we ask, like we go through, like if you call in and say, oh, I know who committed this homicide. We're like, okay, name, do you know where they live?
Right.
Do you know what weapon they used? Do you know where that weapon is?
Right.
Things like that. And then we just kind of say, what else do you got for us?
Right.
It's whatever you want to offer.
Right.
The tip then comes to me. I vet it. So just in case you said like, oh, my cousin was the one who did it, I take out the cousin. That way there's no way that they know you're even related to this person. If you say my neighbor, I take neighbor out. That way they don't even think you live in the neighborhood.
Right.
Anything that could even give you an identity, I take out.
I like that.
Yeah.
When I think about crime, I think about, I heard you mention, what was it, SVU? I think about shows like that, right? Like Law and Order, CSI, these different shows. And it does help, to further elude how much these tips help detectives, law enforcement agencies, and even families get justice and closure for some of these crimes that are committed. So I wanted to ask you, how effective do you think it is having an agency like Crime Stoppers in the community? Like you said, that's independent from law enforcement, right? So you're not obligated or directly tied to any agency, because a lot of times things get shaky with law enforcement. So you say something to them, and whether it's a valid tip or not, they'll still implicate you in, the depositions or whatever that may be. They'll list you as a witness. They'll subpoena you to come to court, whether what you said is valid or not. And I know with Crime Stoppers, it's not so much, like that. You guys actually have steps where you validate these tips. You make sure it's real and true information. So how beneficial do you think that is, that people have somewhere we can go, and we're not just going to be implicated regardless of the fact because you said something about this particular crime that turned into a case?
So I'm like Ricky, before I worked with Crime Stoppers, I was the same way. Like I was like, oh, what is this program? It's like, it's just the police, another way for you to snitch, whatever. Once I started working here, it's so important that every community has this. So I'm Mexican American. I have a lot of illegal family members that growing up, I saw how scared they were to reach out to the police, even just because of their immigration status. Yeah. So I look at it that way. Like, this is a way for people not to have to worry, like, am I going to get deported because I know a murderer?
Right.
Like, am I going to have to get deported or arrested because I was there when this happened?
Right.
So it's a way for someone to come forward because they want to help, but not have any fear of, like, retaliation, not just from the community, but even from law enforcement, because you do have to worry about that. Like, are they not going to look at me like, well, you hang out with a shady person, what are you doing?
Right.
So I think it's the most important thing that every community has this program.
Yeah.
And especially to, like, detectives, a lot of times when they contact me, they know who the person is, but they just need that, like, extra, like, info to really be like, oh, now we got them.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd go as far as to say it's probably, like, safer talking to Crime Stoppers than it would be to law enforcement in many regards because of the thing you bring up. And I also see the wisdom in having a call center outside of the United States. Like, so I can imagine how much of a pain in the ass that is to try to subpoena the conversation.
And I was going to say that. So, like, we used to work with a Texas center, and when we were switching to the Canadian one, that's actually a point that the call center in Canada made to us. Like, attorneys don't want to go through the effort of having to do international subpoenas. So when they hear our call centers in Canada, they're like, it's not worth it.
Right. That's an extra layer of protection.
Yes.
Wow. And where did y'all's system, I'm sure the system y'all have now has gone through many trials and errors and failures to get to be as tight and successful as it is. Where would you say, like, a turn, or has it always been this way? Like, when did it innovate
Technology
to get the way
is
it
just what's innovating it. I want to say maybe like 8-9 years ago, we
Yeah.
were taking tips by hand, like in a
Right.
book, and like that's how
I
we
remember
were doing
those
stuff.
little drop boxes
Yeah,
around the
like-
city
Yeah.
you used to see.
And then I still have it in my office from the old coordinator. She
Yeah.
had like this huge book, and it's just the tip IDs we give you, the information you give us, all in a book. And like
Right.
now we got 2 apps.
Yeah.
We have a website. We have like the call center.
Yeah.
Everything comes through a tip software program that like the International Crime Stoppers has worked with.
Right.
So like everything is technology. Thank God for technology. It's made it so much easier.
Yeah.
It's also even made the reward process easier.
Right.
Yeah.
I love the way you answered that question too, just to jump back on it about how effective it was to have an agency like Crime Stoppers, because my wife is actually from Honduras, right? She's a DACA recipient, but her entire family are illegal, undocumented immigrants, so to speak. And her dad is a business owner. He has a very large business and he's doing very well for himself. But I'm glad you alluded to that. They don't feel like they can trust the police at all. In fact, they actually don't have a very good rapport with the police. Some of the police in their area actually target them. And it's just very wild that they don't have a basis of support. Their home was broken into. They've had things happen to them where they had to just financially overcome it and let it be what it is. So having a nonprofit agency like Crime Stoppers is huge,
Yeah,
where you can report things, you can say what's happening, say what you saw, and it's not going to come back to you in your name and your place of residence. So that's huge. I just wanted to highlight that for the undocumented illegal immigrants or anyone that, may feel like they can't go to the police, so to speak, for protection of self-identity, you have Crime Stoppers where you are totally left out. And I think that's huge. And I wanted to ask you for my next question while we on that. Crime Stoppers for students. Can students use Crime Stoppers for students to report things outside of the school as well? Or is this unique to crimes that are, on the campus or things they know about what's going on campus?
So we have 2 different programs within us, and it's the adult regular Crime Stoppers, and then there's the student Crime Stoppers. So the student Crime Stoppers, it's not as big of a reward. It's up to $1,000, but it's anything that happens on school grounds. The student's more than welcome to report something that doesn't happen on student grounds,
Right.
and that actually qualifies for the $3,000 reward because it's
Nice.
not on
Yeah.
school campus.
Yeah.
So it's like the whole thing with like the undocumented people that can't trust the police. It's kind of the same thing that we target with students. It's
Right.
like they don't trust school. They don't trust their teachers. They don't trust the school resource officer. They are scared that like their classmates will know. This is another way for them to be able to help their school
Right.
without bullying, without any like kind of
Yeah.
stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like we try, one thing that we have really been focusing on in this last like couple 6 months
Mm-hmm.
is going to schools, talking to students, letting them know that like, especially with all the school shootings happening,
Right.
I'll tell you in the last 6 months, we have stopped 3
Wow.
tips we have gotten in the last 6, actually probably 4 months.
Yeah.
We got 3 tips that actually did stop. The students were charged with threats
Imagine
to
how
commit
many
a mass
lives
shooting.
saved, man, by that.
That's
So
impressive.
So it's in another one. We found a gun on campus in a bush.
Yeah.
It actually ended up being a stolen gun. So,
Wow.
it's like these are the things we have to keep the kids safe. We have to keep the
Absolutely.
kids safe, the community safe.
Yeah.
So we try to educate as much as we can on it.
Exactly. And not only are people contributing information for the well-being and safety of everyone around them, but there's also a financial incentive. I heard you say for students reporting crime in their schools, there's a $1,000 incentive. And for people in community-based Crime Stoppers, there's a $3,000. How does it work? If Crime Stoppers is anonymous, how do people go about getting the incentive that they deserve for leading or sharing a tip that led to the safety of their brethren?
So really quick, the steps to submitting a tip. When you submit a tip, you get what's called a tip ID number. And
Gotcha.
that is basically a way for you to call and check on your tip and
Yeah.
see if there's a reward, see if we need more information. You
Yeah.
also get a password. That password allows you to log into our website or our app and check it yourself, update it yourself
Yeah.
That's dope.
without having to provide an email.
Wow.
Your tip ID is essentially your username.
Got you.
So then if your tip leads to an arrest, all our Crime Stoppers tips have to lead to an arrest unless it's a student one. A student
Yeah.
one can lead to narcotics recovery, property recovery, school suspension,
Yeah.
anything like that.
Yeah.
So once it, is resolved and it did help, you get what's called, you call me.
Yeah.
I will tell you what day you can come pick up your reward. The board
Yeah.
meets once a month to approve the amount and what they want to offer them.
Yeah.
So you will call me. I'll tell you what day to call me to pick up. That day that you call me, I give you a reward code that is specific to that day.
Yeah.
I get your physical description, just clothing, general, like white, black, Hispanic, male, female, height, weight kind of
Right.
thing.
Right.
I give you the address of the bank that we use, which is downtown.
Yeah.
And you will go that day. You'll go up to the teller. You'll say, I'm here to pick up a reward with Crime Stoppers.
Yeah.
They'll ask you for that reward code. They'll make sure what you gave me as the description matches.
Yeah.
You get cash.
Wow.
You don't sign anything. You don't need ID. The only thing is if you are under 16, we do ask that a parent goes with you.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, totally anonymous. I have no idea who these people are.
Yeah. And I think that's amazing because a lot of the people that we represent that are living in these communities of concentrated violence, crime, and disadvantage, I'm sure there are people that need the income. They could use an extra $3,000 or whatever the reward is. And also knowing that they're making their community safer. I feel like in our communities, we've become so apathetic to the crime there. Like we were just at a neighborhood park 2 Fridays ago where a shooting happened, and after getting all the children on the ground and making sure they were safe until the shooting stopped, once you see the cars speed away, you run up to see if there's any victims or offer any help before police come. But then once the residents come out, you can kind of get a feel of the general apathy that people don't believe anything meaningful is going to happen to make them feel safer.
Right.
They see the gaps in police response where when the police got there, we're telling them, look, they went that way. But instead of pursuing, they stay at the scene.
Right.
So when residents see things like that, it makes it hard for them to believe that law enforcement is for them. So I think any way that we can utilize nonprofits, technology, social capital to give people that sense of agency where they feel like they can make a very real difference in the crime in their community, I think that's a step in the right direction.
That's a great point, Ricky. I think it's necessary that we have these agencies and we have individuals like ourselves from our organizations in place with a real heart for this stuff, man,
Right.
that have come from these communities. Like you said, you've been involved in a life of crime, so to speak, where you've been surrounded by crime, whether it be entertainment, whether it be in reality, whatever it be, it's just crime all around. And it has a way of breeding us into very humble and spirited individuals, and that's a part of what we were doing yesterday at Palm Beach Preparatory Academy.
Right.
So we were out there at that back to school event, and we had a lot of you guys' pamphlets and your cards out on the table. But not only that, we were actually spreading some of this information to the youth that were there, because I was asking a lot of them the same question: if there's something that could be in the community to make it a better place, what do you think that would be?
Right.
And they all kept telling me something just to stop the violence, bro. It's just a lot of violence that goes on for no reason, and they all felt like it needed to be something in place. And that's where we had a great opportunity. Like, okay, well, we want you to know that you not only have organizations like us, but you have Crime Stoppers.
Right.
You have a lot of different community-based organizations and nonprofits out here for your benefit, so use them. And then lastly, bro, the statement you made during your speech, Ricky, where you told them, like, hey, if you're not a part of the solution, if you're not saying what you saw, if you're not stepping up, speaking up, then you're just being a part of the problem, essentially. And I think that's ballpark numbers, man.
Exactly.
I think it's ballpark numbers. The students see a lot, they hear a lot, they know a lot, and they spend a lot more time in the streets than we do as adults. And I think it's imperative that they know someone's there for them. As young as I am, we just didn't know that when I was a student not too long ago.
Yeah.
So I think it's very essential that the kids know.
And I want to touch back a little bit to the whole the concept that people think it's snitching.
Yeah.
Right.
A new way to look at it would be you're helping your community.
Right.
And you're also helping yourself, because if it leads to an arrest and you're in a position financially, there's money there that can help you.
Yep.
We give $1,000 reward sometimes, even just for someone. If you know someone has a warrant, that's $350 right there, minimum, just for someone who has a warrant. So it's like, that's a bill. I mean, I know my electricity bill is like $200. That's a bill.
Yep.
Like, you know?
Exactly.
So don't look at it so much as snitching. Look at it as helping your community and helping yourself, too.
Exactly.
Because at the end of the day, it also makes you safe.
Versus you go to the police and then they,
You don't get anything. They ask you for everything.
If it's invalid, now they arrest you. You lied. You gave a bad tip, man. So it could go so many ways trying to go to law enforcement.
Exactly.
It's just straight up and down with Crime Stoppers, you know.
And then even thinking about like what snitching is or why that rule came up, you know, the advent of that came at a time where our communities were really unfairly targeted and disenfranchised, not only by systemic actors, but law enforcement themselves. And so a lot of the people committing crimes in our communities, especially in the 70s, 80s, early 90s, were doing it to make a living. You know, we know when the black man was targeted, taken out of the homes, where a lot of the issues we see now that was a root cause. You needed this underground market for people to be paid and make money. So at that time, to snitch was to take money out of a family or food off of someone else's table. That's not so much the case today. You know, we literally have kids murdering kids because there are no men in our communities. The men that I talk to outside of us, the Hope dealers, are terrified of these young men.
Right.
Because they're so hot-headed, because they're so willing and able to pick up a gun. And that's why most of our work as an organization is developed around social emotional learning and helping them slow down. All of our team is trained in cognitive behavioral theory to help our young people slow themselves down when they're in these situations where they be tempted to pick up a gun. So I think with partnerships like ours, where you have us engaging the young people most likely to pick up a gun, but then you offer resources like yourselves to the community, it brings a level of authority or fear of social control back to the element. Because once people lose the fear that there are consequences for bad actors, more people are going to be tempted to be bad actors, right?
Yeah.
You telling me I could work 40 hours a week to make the same amount as someone that could just go commit a robbery, knowing that he probably won't get charged? For a kid growing up who already struggles with understanding the consequences of certain actions, it's an easy choice.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And I agree with that, you know. I agree with that. In our community, we got very few places near in between to look up to. We want to be something, or we think we want to be somebody. So when you alluded to the, you know, older gentlemen that are outside of the organization and into the community, I'll say it again, like I said before, if you guys don't start to step up and become part of the solutions to fix the issues, then you guys are just, you know, greater culprits of the problem.
Right.
You're just further facilitating the issue, man, because a lot of these kids need outlets. They need resources. They need, you know, agents, so to speak, that they can go to and get these guns, that they can go to and get these drugs. And this stuff, you know, it kind of channels down from these adults. So, man, you know, you guys are just as aware as the children are of what goes on. You guys see it. You guys hear it. I know some of you are convicted felons, and that's another thing. Things like that would make certain dudes afraid to go to the police. Like, hey, I'm a convicted felon. I can't be wrapped up in this kind of stuff, giving these kinds of tips. So it's so many ways that would drive us away from trying to...
Can a convicted felon report a crime?
Absolutely, anyone can.
Right.
Anyone can. And like the other thing too, it doesn't have to be something that you know for a fact happened. You could even report like, hey, there's a lot of activity at this house. I think there's drugs. I think there's trafficking.
Right.
We send that to the proper divisions. They investigate it. Trust me, they do. They open investigations. They do surveillance based on these tips we get. Just if you think something's happening. So, I mean, we had one recently too where a neighbor said that this parent was leaving their child alone, a toddler, alone in the middle of the night for nights on end. They went and investigated. They arrested them on child neglect. You know what I mean? So just because, even if you just think something's happening, let us know. At the very least, they investigated it. Nothing comes from it. But at least you know you tried.
And that's a great point, because human trafficking is a really big thing that's happening right now. and it happens right up under our eyes. Like you think it's out there, it's over there, but sometimes it's right next to you, it's right next door. Especially abuse, you know, where women are being abused. You know, you hear it through the paper thin walls in your housing development, and sometimes you feel like the woman might be too afraid to say anything. You know, that's a tip. It's not just gun violence, even though that's what we're passionate about, but there are many things where if we don't shore up or find our courage or start to refine that sense of agency, our community is going to be lost. And I don't think it's ever too late to get back to the unity that it takes to make a community strong. How big is Crime Stoppers? Is it in all 50 or 51? How many states we got?
50
You know,
in
telling
one
these
territory?
days, now we got 50. Yeah, I'm about to
Is it
say,
all
including
50
territories
states?
or not.
And maybe it's just in regions. And also, what does ultimate success look like for Crime Stoppers?
So Crime Stoppers is actually international. It's in Australia. It's in New England. Like, it's in England.
Yeah.
It's in Mexico.
Yeah.
It's international. In the country, in the United States, it's in every single state. It actually goes by, like, counties.
Yeah.
So Palm Beach County being so large, it's one organization for the whole county. But,
Yeah.
like, for example, Treasure Coast is the other Crime Stoppers. They have Martin County, St. Lucie County, and Indian River County, I
Yeah,
think is what
yeah,
it is.
yep.
And then, like, there's a Broward one and a Miami-Dade one. So it's based on counties.
Yeah.
But it's everywhere. Every
Wow.
place that you are in has one.
Yeah.
And the good thing about our app is, let's say you aren't from here, but you're here on vacation or something.
Right.
You can just put what city you're in and it leads you to the right one.
Yeah.
Or let's say you are on vacation in Atlanta or in North Carolina.
Yeah.
If you just put what city you're currently in, it'll send it to the right one, even if you don't know which one it is.
Wow.
That's the great thing about our app. So
Yeah.
definitely utilize the app if that's an easier way.
And what's the name of that app?
So there's a Crime Stoppers USA app, but then there's also P3 app. Is
Gotcha.
literally P3 app, and that gives you all states, all counties, and then what kind of tip you want to do.
Got you. And let's say if all counties aren't covered and somebody's in a county that's not represented, can they reach out to start a Crime Stopper in their county if it doesn't exist?
Absolutely. So it's usually, you do have to kind of have some kind of connection with law enforcement to kind of
Yeah.
get the ball rolling, because
Yeah.
you have to have a good relationship with
Yeah,
law
working
enforcement to do it.
relationship.
But most law enforcements are about it. Like
Yeah.
a lot of them,
Right.
like up in your Midwest states,
Yeah.
they use the Crime Stoppers for the state because they just need to use someone.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're interested in ever doing one more centralized,
Yeah.
Crime Stoppers USA is the national one, and that's a good starting point if you ever wanted to start one in your community.
Got you.
I think that's dope. I think it's very dope. I love the idea of Crime Stoppers. Since a kid, I've always seen it. I've always heard about it, but I've never heard of anybody utilizing Crime Stoppers, right? So that's what the next step has to be for us as a community, I believe. It's the utilization and the application of the resources. I always talk to y'all about rules of engagement, right? We don't know what to do because we don't know how to do it and we don't know where to go. Well, let this episode serve as a redirection from that, right? So now we have an idea of what we can do, of how we can do that, and where we can go to do that if we want to report something, if we want to report it anonymously, and we want these tips to actually reach some traction. Because like I said earlier, law enforcement relies heavily on these tips, and it's always fun and it's always games and it's always snitching and this and that until it's you and your family that need justice, until it's something that happened to you and yours and you want to know who did it and you want to know what happened. I've seen it firsthand with my own two eyes. Some of the same people that go around and spread these type of poisonous paradigms amongst our people to say you a snitch or you a rat or whatever you are, when you stand up and you speak out against what's wrong, listen, some of those same people have been on the other end of the stick, and I watch them suffer when nobody gives tips, nobody gives advice, or nobody knows what happened to your loved ones or your friends.
And I will say, I know a lot of people are like, well, nothing ever gets done anyways. And that's sometimes what their experience, unfortunately, is with law enforcement.
Right.
I am the one getting the tips. I follow up. I give them a month. And then I follow up and say, hey, is this under investigation? Have you looked into it? What do you need from me? Then I follow up again 3 months after that. I get an answer.
Yeah.
So I guarantee you guys, if you submit a tip with me, I'm going to get a solution out of it. I'm going to get an answer and make sure it is investigated. I follow up.
And I wanted to ask this too. So great thing that you mentioned follow-ups. When submitting tips, do you recommend following up those tips as well? So can you do multiple submissions of a tip if you feel like, all right, let me submit it once now, let me submit it again in a month or 3 months?
I think once you submit that first time, they give you
that tip ID
right,
and
right,
that
right, right.
call to check in, and they can give you updates.
Yeah, I can give you updates. You can give me updates. We also recommend that you do log in and follow up because I sometimes put in there follow-up questions like, hey, we found the person, but can you tell us this? And it's usually questions from detectives or even just questions that I know I'm going to need, so I kind of try to preemptly ask.
Right.
Yeah.
And then that's also where I put, hey, your tip led to something. Call me for your reward. So we always encourage you to follow up. That way, if we need more, if it's ready to pick up, you can at least know what's going on. But definitely call, anyone can call me. My phone number's on our website.
Yeah.
You can always call the 800 number. Option 2 gets you directly to me.
Yeah.
I have a work line, like a work cell phone, so I'm available 24/7. The call center will call me at any time.
Got you. So let's say there's the family of a victim. You know, they're going through a hard time. They just lost a loved one. And, you know, because we deal with these kind of families all the time, like if it's not us bringing media attention to the issue, then the families oftentimes feel like they don't have any support. Do you all offer any services to the families of victims?
Yeah, absolutely. So most detectives know to contact us, but obviously law enforcement's constantly changing. There's constantly new hires. Yeah. So there's no harm in you telling them. Tell your detective or tell your police officer, like, hey, can you give our case to Crime Stoppers? And what we do, we have bus shelters all throughout the county.
Yeah.
We have a billboard. We have flyers that I draft. I post it on all 3 of our social medias, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
Yeah.
And then I also have about 13 media contacts that I send things to. So if you are a victim's family member, or if it was you are the victim and you survived and you want to know who did this to you or know who did this to you and you want to find them, you can call me too. You can call me directly. I will get approval from your detective and your investigator first, but you can call me and say, I want to do this.
Right.
We offer a $3,000 reward, but if a family raises funds and wants to up the reward, they can also do that with us.
Dope.
If you raise $5,000 and you want to make the reward $8,000 now, we do that. So we work with the families directly. I work with a lot of families. They're the sweetest, and like I feel for them so much. So I like talking to the families. You know, you get a different perspective of it.
And that is so important. Like when I started this organization, I knew that the number one thing we had to do is to give every young black man killed a story, a name and a story, where it wasn't just another young man of color gunned down here, another young man, because when it's like that, it's easy for people to forget.
Yes.
But when you share the story of the person that is deceased or that was victimized, and you plaster their picture in places where people remember it, if you know something, it almost haunts you that you got to or you should cooperate and say something. So I really commend y'all for that.
And the picture we use is always one the family provides.
Yeah.
So we don't like to use just a DL or a booking photo. It's whatever photo you loved of your family member.
Yeah.
That's what we want to use. We want them to see who they were as a person and not what people thought they were.
Right. Exactly. You get to tell your own story.
Definitely. And the communication is there for the most part from what I'm getting from it. You guys are very effective in communicating with your tip providers. There's many different resources and outlets there for tip providers to be communicative and transparent back with you guys. And, I don't want to, kind of derail law enforcement, so to speak, but it's a great opportunity to highlight where law enforcement lacks and where you guys pick up that slack, right? Because because sometimes even when you do report credible tips to law enforcement or detectives, the process is a hassle. They don't follow up with you. Months, weeks, years go by. Sometimes these cases go cold. Great tips end up going cold, and it turns into kind of a rampant response from them on their behalf. And then we could take it a step further to where I remember we did our episode about Chief Adderley and his press conference, where we had community members coming out directly to the press conference to give tips and allude law enforcement, the police chief himself, to what's going on, and he's denying them the opportunity to do that. So the fact that you guys don't deny people their voice, you are willing to hear their tips, you are willing to hear them out and actually put some traction behind what these people are saying is great, because law enforcement does lack a lot of in terms of following up on things.
Yeah. Y'all truly are the definition of hope dealers.
And I do, like, in the last year that I've been there, I have seen, just from when I started to now, that law enforcement is doing so much of a better job to work with us.
Yeah.
They're utilizing us because they're seeing the results that we are getting. So the more we can get out there and educate the public, the more we help everyone, them and the public.
Exactly.
As they should.
And I can imagine they're overrun with work to do. So when you're able to come in with these files, it's organized, it's accountable, it's probably a huge asset to them.
Yes.
And is there anything else you feel like people should know about Crime Stoppers? And also, I'd like to ask, where do people donate if they want to donate to Crime Stoppers?
So if you wanted to donate, we have it on our website. There's a donate now button, and it's honestly anything you'd like. We'll take all the donations. It all goes towards the rewards. It goes towards the bus shelters. It goes towards the flyers and the graphics that we do. So it's being well utilized, not just for the people calling in, but also for the victims' families, because we use it towards things we help them on. And then as far as, like, what I want you to know about Crime Stoppers, I think we touched a lot of it, but we're here. We want to help. If anyone listening has an opportunity where they want us to come educate, we do go out to stuff. We'll go anywhere. We've done HOA meetings. We've done, like, community meetings, things like that, schools. So if anyone wants us to come by and just kind of educate, we have promo items, we have flyers, we have a lot of things that we can distribute for education.
That's awesome. LaShawn, any final thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you guys for all the services you provide, for everything you do for the community. I think the coolest thing about Crime Stoppers is the logo. I don't know why that thing has always just popped out.
Logo.
It's always just popped out to me, man. I don't know why. For life, I just know. Look at that logo. It looks
just
cool.
Because it's our organization, but I do think it has the coolest logo.
It got some pizzazz.
It got some style to it, don't it? It's just something about it, man. But so yeah, that logo always stands out to me. And I think that's important. I think Crime Stoppers is a great organization. So far, from what I've heard from you, from what I heard from your leader, what was her name again? Remind me?
Angela.
From what I heard from Angela, you guys got a lot going on. You got a lot of things new coming with Crime Stoppers, a lot of innovative things, which is great, to constantly reinvent the wheel.
Yes.
Constantly keep it fresh. People change, things change, crimes get more advanced, and things happen. So I just wanted to, give you guys a thank you for everything you do, and for partnering up with our organization to kind of highlight the importance and the, overdriving necessity of the work we are doing to try and repair the broken links of disadvantage out here. So thank you guys.
Thank you for having me. And, like, I actually just remembered now, we also have been getting a lot of, like, ring footage, which isn't really information but you caught a shooting on your ring. Submit that stuff. It helps.
Submit it to Crime Stoppers. Ring.
Submit it. Submit your ring camera.
Get your 3 bands, man. Get your 3 bands.
But thank you guys for having me. I think it's really important that we just keep telling people the resources that are out there for them.
Absolutely. And I'll close with this. Like, I know how this sounds. I know how it looks. We're the hope dealers. We're from the hood. I'm still there. I'm very accessible. But my favorite definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing and expecting different results, right? We tried the whole no snitching thing, right? We tried the whole, like, zero cooperation, and look where it's gotten us. Our communities are terrorized. Our single mothers are struggling to hold on to their sons long enough so that they're not victimized by gun violence. Our children are growing up in communities that are comparable to war zones. It just doesn't work. We have to start rebuilding some structure that is going to ensure the safety of our children. If you don't care about yourself, I get it. I was there. But everybody should be concerned about making sure our kids have the best chance possible to overcome the odds that many of us had to go through. That's the whole basis behind everything we do as an organization, is to use our personal life experiences to make the world better for the kids who are growing up in the communities that we're from. So if you got a problem with this video, y'all know where to find me. We'll be at Heart and Soul Park on Friday, this Friday from 6 to 8. We're there every Friday, and we're doing community engagements on Tamarind when we're not there. So come see us. I love your feedbacks, but it's time for a new day in our hood, and the Hope Deals are here to deliver. So thank you again.
Thank you.
And we'll see y'all next episode. Peace.